All right, so what we got coming up for boxing this year?
Well, we already had a big fight, which was Garcia on Dazn,
The
DAZN,
zone.
the zone.
I
He
don't know how
won.
you get the zone out of it, but it's the zone.
It looked like Dazn,
Dazzing.
but he had a big body shot. I don't know who his opponent was. Big body
Luke
shot,
Campbell.
and who?
Luke Campbell.
Luke Campbell had a big body shot. I feel like this is. I think this is Garcia's first time getting knocked down, and I feel like he
Mm-hmm.
came back very strong after that. Hit him with a body shot that put his opponent down to the ground on all fours, and he couldn't get back up from that. But there's some big fights coming up this year in boxing that I feel like is very exciting. I think it's more exciting than UFC personally. You got the Garcia calling out Javante
Now I got a
Davis.
question
You
before you go
got
forward. I got a
Go
question before you
ahead.
go forward. If Tank hit Garcia with the exact same punch, does Garcia get up from that?
No, no, Garcia see
So
Jesus.
do we even think that he stands a chance in that fight?
I feel like he stands a chance with his hand speed, and especially with his technique. But Javante Davis only needs one punch,
All right, go
and
ahead.
as you saw in Javante's last fight, all he needed was one punch because he was losing that fight.
Ooh, go ahead. What's the next one?
Well, next fight we got one picture on the screen right here: Anthony Joshua versus the Gypsy King. I don't even know if this fight's gonna happen, man, because they signed a contract or they signed to fight this year. Then all of a sudden, something came about. So hopefully, this fight gets put on to the point where we get a unified title between either Gypsy King or Anthony Joshua. But it looks like it might not happen. And then you got the Bronze Bomber out there who's looking for a big fight as well, who's wants the Gypsy King one more time because it's in the contract.
Now here's a question. Since we're talking about 2021 moving forward, nobody wants to see that fight. We done seen it twice. Even though the first one ended in a draw, that's perfectly fine.
I want to
Who
see it.
would okay, pretend like you don't. Do do do. All right. So, who would he need to fight and beat to immediately be back in that picture? Is it old buddy that knocked out Joshua? Who
Yeah,
who is it?
have him go fight old buddy who knocked out Joshua because
Andy
he's a boxer.
Ruiz. There it
Boxer.
is.
Andy Ruiz. Have him go fight Andy Ruiz, and if he beats Andy, and this is also a fight for Andy to come back and be like, I'm
I
not
shouldn't have
that
I
Andy
shouldn't have
who
fell off.
fought Anthony Joshua. Yeah, so that's a big fight right there. That's
Okay.
a pretty cool idea right there because the Bronze Bomber gets an opportunity to come back strong against Andy, and Andy gets an opportunity to show that he can still box or he can box up to the caliber that he did when he fought Anthony Joshua the first time to get the belt. So that's a great fight because if Bronze Bomber wins that fight, then he has a question or he has an opportunity
For
to bring up the question
after this
to
fight
fight
gets made,
Anthony.
not before.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And then that means he doesn't have to go through Gypsy King if Anthony Joshua was to unify the belts.
Either that, or even if this fight doesn't get put together, if he beats Andy Ruiz, I say the fight doesn't get put together, and then he goes and fights Anthony Joshua. I would still be excited about that. But him fighting
I
either
still,
one of these two right now, I don't really want to see it. Don't care. I'd rather
but
see them
but
fight each
here's
other, even though
but
I
here's the other thing too. If Anthony Joshua was to lose to the Gypsy King, get a rematch, and maybe he lost again. Bronze Bomber fights Andy Ruiz, wins. Then Bronze Bomber fights Anthony Joshua to see the Gypsy King for the third time. Either one gets to see the Gypsy King for a third time. But I feel like Gypsy King might retire.
yeah, he may.
I feel like he might retire after he unifies the belt and he defends his title one time. I think he might
I
retire.
wouldn't be mad at him. Now,
But then you get Anthony Joshua versus the Bronze Bomber for the unified championship belts,
which I'm
and
still
that'll
mad
be
at.
a
I'm not
title
mad
fight.
at that either.
I'm not mad at that either.
Now,
I think that'd be a good fight too.
I've got some other ones that's coming up. You know, Spencer Crawford is always going to be out there.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Ain't
yeah,
a lot to talk about because hell, they always been talking about it. You know,
yeah.
will we see this in 2021? We don't know. So, with that being said, some other fights This fight is written on the list. I'm just watching. CBS Sports has brought up the fights to make for 2021, and they said Canelo Alvarez versus Jamel Charlo, which I can now tell you that
Yeah.
won't happen
Why?
because Canelo said, "Hey, bruh, I'm good." What is he at? 168 right now. He
Mm-hmm.
is not going back to 160. He said it. He said, "I'm not going back to 160." So that takes out the Charlo
What
fight.
if what if the Charlo brother comes up to 168?
That's tough. So by the time this fight gets put together, Canelo would have is it two belts at 168?
Mm-hmm.
He would be accustomed to that weight. He would be accustomed to where he is. So someone else coming up to meet him, the greatest boxer, arguably, and now he's used to the weight that he's at. That's a tough one to swallow. And then you got Charlo or you got Earl Spence. They was talking about that fight too, maybe at 160. But Canelo said, "Bro, I'm good." He'll rather just go out and knock out all the other people and unify all the belts. He ain't got no problem with that. So I'm like, hey, go get it. We're not gonna get to see that fight
Now,
though.
the one thing I hate about boxing though is because we don't get to see the best versus the best sometimes,
Yep.
which sometimes I hate that. You always when you fight, you watching a fight, you watching somebody that you can clearly see that that individual is better or faster than the other individual, and then sometimes luck hits it, and then the wrong person wins the fight, such as the Andy Ruiz. Everyone thought that Anthony Joshua was going to win that fight hands down. Then Andy came in, boxed his ass, hit him with a good shot or a couple good shots, and put Anthony Joshua on his ass, and everyone's like, "Oh my goodness, I didn't know Andy could fight like this." But people in the boxing world knew Andy can box, knew Andy had a hard punch, knew Andy could throw them bungalows, and the UFC does a great job pitching best versus best. Let's see who is the number one in each individual uh uh what you call it? Each individual weight class.
Yeah. But
So
that's also to the detriment of the fighters though.
true,
Because
true.
if you look at it like this, yes, we are going to wait forever for the Spence Crawford fight, like we had to wait forever for the Manny Pacquiao fight.
But
That
that
was a
fight
different
wasn't as good
that was
as
a
it would have been back in the
I
day
know
though.
that was a different sort of reasoning. You know, love him, I hate him for what he did. You know, he still did it. That's fine. Mayweather, that is. But we wait for these fights, and these people are like, "Look, if you want me to take this fight, then I'm going to need to get paid." We have
Yeah.
seen a ton of times in the UFC where we get legendary fights. You know, your Robbie Lawler versus Roy McDonald back when Roy was the man. You know, we get these legendary fights, and then they made like $200,000. You know,
Yeah.
and so that makes it kind of tough. So I'm never mad at Errol Spence for saying, "Yo, if you want me to take this Crawford fight, which this is the fight. That's the highest point on the mountain besides maybe going up a weight class and fighting Canelo. But where he is right now, this is the highest point. Then I'm going to need you to maximize how much money you are going to pay me and everybody I know." And they like, "Yo, we not trying to come off of that because we feel like we the A side." Well, somebody's gonna have to give, and if nobody gives and we don't see it, you know,
Tough shit.
tough shit. You know,
And I think that's what happened in the Mayweather versus Pacquiao. It's one of those things where Mayweather wanted a number, couldn't get it, didn't sign, finally got it, signed. Both fighters are older, and it's not as good as we thought it could have been
yeah.
or it should have been. So I just wish boxing would put on more elite fights and just throw the money out the window, man. Because it's one of those things
Yeah.
where it's just like, hey, I'm throwing together this elite fight right now. Maybe in the future I'll get my money back, but everybody's in for their own selves, so it is what it
You
is.
gotta be you gotta be in it for yourself, you know. Mayweather's
I'm talking
grinding
about
his
I'm talking about
millions.
promoters. I'm talking about
Oh,
promoters.
promoters,
I'm
yeah, they
talking about
suck.
promoters.
They suck.
I'm not talking about boxers, man, because you putting your life on the line when you go into the ring. You sign those dotted line saying that there's an opportunity for you to die in that ring right there. You should get compensated and well compensated for that action. And if you do end it all in the ring itself, then your family should be compensated well enough to the point where it's not like they can't forget you, but they can also live uh,
We
a
know what you
better
mean. We know
life.
what you mean.
They can live a better life because of you.
And some other fights they
So
talk about Shakur Stevenson versus Vasily Lomachenko. That'd be pretty dope. I'm not mad at
yeah,
that.
Lomachenko called them all out, man.
And
Lomachenko called them all out. He
Teofimo
even called out
Lopez.
Javante. He even called out. Oh no, not Lomachenko. Uh
Teofimo.
Lopez is calling out Javante
Yeah.
Davis too.
And they've been trying to put that fight together too.
Javante finna make some money this
Yep.
year, man.
And watch this, but listen to this. While they're calling this guy out, the only way that we're gonna have these fights get put together, I bet, is because Javante is gonna be on the A side getting paid out the wazoo. And that's
Because they calling him
yeah,
out.
and that's just
Davis
how
not
it's gonna
calling
work.
him out.
They're gonna
Yeah.
have to give up something. And
Yeah.
in the Crawford versus Spence fight, no side wants to budge, so we're not gonna get that fight, or we're gonna
Man,
get it late.
Crawford's a beast, man. Crawford's a beast.
Yeah, it's a big one by it all. So look,
Man, I'm gonna tell you one thing before we get into other news, man. Boxing itself this year is more promising just from the fights that you named right there
it's
than
dynamic
the UFC this year.
because of
Because
the names. Yeah,
and not only do you have big names in boxing itself, but you got these BS promotions with the Logan Pauls of the world facing Floyd Mayweather. It's just like I don't want to see this train wreck, as you call it, happen. But it's like I'm going to watch
I'm
it,
gonna
and
watch
it's
it.
boxing,
Yeah,
man. It's boxing, and then you got Mike Tyson finna fight again against Evander Holyfield 3. It's like, do I want to watch them get brain damage again?
not really, but
No,
damn,
but
I'm
am I
gonna
going to
watch it.
watch it? Yes.
Yeah,
It feels like boxing is hitting a new height
and
because they have bigger names fighting.
now listen to this. The only way that I can equate this is to bring back retired fighters. Listen to something like this. You take a name and you say, would I watch Javante Davis fight? You be like, yeah. And that's how I feel about whenever you say a name in the UFC right now. But then when you put a name on the other side that's as equally or less
Yes.
equally intriguing, would I watch Javante Davis fight? Yeah. Would I watch Javante versus Teofimo Lopez? Hell yeah. I'll
Yeah.
watch that. But listen, but watch this. So I'm excited about that fight. Well, what if we don't get that fight? Well, would I watch Javante Davis versus Garcia? Hell yeah, I watch that too.
Hell yeah,
It's so dynamic. I'd watch Canelo versus Charlo all day. I'd watch Canelo versus Earl Spence all day. It's so many interchangeable names. You know,
Yes.
Vasily Lomachenko, he makes a comeback. I'd watch that all day.
I would too. And I feel like Lomachenko was injured
He
the
was.
last time he fought. And
Bit delusional with some of the stuff he said, but we're not gonna talk about that.
that's why I said I feel like, because it's a bit delusional. And just watching him fight in the past compared to that last fight, it just felt like he wasn't his best,
Yeah.
or he wasn't at his best. He comes back with a vengeance, and then all of a sudden his name is thrown in the whole pile of big fights in
Blicky
2021.
Pacquiao. Yeah.
I'm saying
It's so
2021 for
dynamic.
boxing looks good, man. It looks real good.